So to begin with, can you shed some light on the potential for wind power in India, excluding forest cover and water bodies? Basically the figure that you...
Okay, so this study was done about 3 years ago, and we made some standard assumptions about you can't build wind on high hills or really steep hillsides, water bodies or rural urban areas, and we excluded forests from that. So the number that comes out, that we came out with, was about 2,000 megawatts at 80 meter hub height. Sorry, 2,000 gigawatts at about 80 meter hub height. This has not been validated with ground truthing, so we don't really know if, one has to go and actually see exactly was this forest or not, was this cropland or not, was this barren or not, and if that needs to happen, we are simply asserting that based on the publicly available data, and there could be better data sources now, that we have a large amount of wind that's available in the country that can be harnessed. It's not really a limitation. That's about it.
Okay. And from your experience of having worked in both countries and worked in the area as well, could you compare the wind potential in India and in the US and the targets as well? The two countries have set.
So the US has much larger wind potential using a similar study, similar methodology in the study that US did. I think it was in 2010, about a year before we did our work. I think they came out with a potential of onshore of 12,000 gigawatts, and probably a similarly large number for offshore. So clearly US has got way more wind than India. It's a larger landmass, the weather patterns are different, the geography is different, so we just see a lot. Has US been doing a lot on wind? Yes, wind development started in the US in the 80s, right after the oil crisis. There was a big investment that happened at that time, then the investment fell. Once the oil crisis waned off, there was hardly any development, and in the last 10 years it has started to pick up again. Wind development in the US is not driven by any central government target. The central government doesn't really have much of a role in setting targets. The central government does provide a bit of an incentive in the form of a tax credit. The central government can provide some other types of incentives also. Most of the action in the US is driven by RPOs at a state level. And that has been a pretty varied experience over the history. Some states have done more, like California has done a lot, Texas has done a lot. The Midwestern states, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana are doing a lot. Nowadays, the Dakotas are also doing a lot of development. But these are really driven by state issues. Now, I think majority, way more than majority of the US states have some RPOs that they have decided. These are not national RPOs, these are state RPOs. And they're pursuing those things in the best way they think is right for their states. So it's wind and solar or biomass or geothermal, all of those are included.
Okay, energy mix almost.
Yes.
And can you comment similarly on the implementation of wind here in India?
So in wind, the RPO was decided partly through the National Action Plan on Climate Change, the 15% by 2020 target. And then the regulators use that number to come up with trajectories for their states. Now, given the nature of wind, which is severely restricted in, by region, it's not available in some states it's available to cover probably the entire demand. So there obviously has to be somebody to buy the excess wind that gets generated, and that I think is one of the major gaps in the policy situation in India. How to enable that from a regulatory way, from a pure commercial way, from a grid integration way, transmission planning way. All those things need to be solved so that anybody can buy power from anywhere. And it's not like we don't know how to do this. We have been selling power from coal plants that are situated far away from the state, so we know how to do that. We know how those transactions happen, so we need to figure out how to do that for wind also.
Okay, the attention has to shift
to the buyers. We have to figure out why the states, the distribution companies basically, the state-owned distribution companies, how can they buy this? And what are the reasons they are not buying it? That's something that needs to be focused on. They're poor, yes, but not all of them. Delhi is not exactly a poor state, so Delhi can buy. And the southern wind that blows in monsoon blows at a time when Delhi is sweltering in the summer heat. So they certainly can use that wind to meet their peak demand. How to enable that, how much they should pay for it, are all questions for policymakers.
Correct. And CSE is pushing for, or has even released reports on how there currently exists no environmental assessment norms for setting up wind projects. Could you tell us a little bit about whether there exist any global standards or there exists in standards in other countries, examples that we can
Yes,
look
certainly.
at?
And I think the CSA report did have a lot of references to EIA methods in other places. So I think there is no global standard. The nature of environmental impact assessments is really driven by local awareness, I would say. Even in the US, there is a wide range of environmental impact assessments that happen. In a place like California, where I live, the level of standards is incredibly high. And that's just what the society wants in California. In other places, it could be very low. But it's a local topic, and everybody has an opinion about that. What should be the case in India, I think, needs to be decided through due process. Work with the society, work with the people who live in those areas. What's okay, what's not okay. It has to be a due process. Everybody has different ways of perceiving these things.
Okay. You're saying it has to be society driven somewhere.
It has to be. I mean, there are values associated with each of these things. How people value trees and streams is going to be different from country to country, locality to locality. How people value aesthetics and vistas. I know there are some parts in the US which hate looking at these turbines, even though they are green. They don't like the physical intrusion on a natural landscape. Now that's a value. How do you compare that across communities? Some communities may find that they're actually proud that they have wind turbines. So those are the differences that need to be accounted from a local process. It has to be a bottom-up process, not a top-down process. I think that's my opinion.